My name is Luca Somigli. I'm the chair of the Department of Italian Studies and Dojo Chair in Italian Studies, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here in presence, as we say, and for those of you who are following us on YouTube, for an event organized by TICS, the dreaded TICS, the Toronto Italian Comic Studies study group that we have founded with some colleagues and postdoc fellows here at the University of Toronto a few years ago. We often have online events because there are a lot of people who are interested in Italian comics, but they all matter all over the world, so that's a good way to reach our potential audience. So I'm particularly pleased to welcome you here to what is in fact an in-person event with Italian comics creators based here in Toronto. So it's a nice change of pace from our usual online events. Also, online events tend to be more about the history, the aesthetics of comics. Here, on the other hand, we have the opportunity to talk to the people that actually produce comics and give us a peek behind the scenes of comic creation. So, with no further ado, I will let my colleague Simona Di Martino come up to the podium, or maybe from there, introduce the panelists. She has organized this event, so thank you for taking the initiative. And
thank you so much, Luca, for introducing us and for telling us something about the TICS, which is this amazing group of researchers working on comics, specifically Italian comics. So I'm very happy to be here with artists and creators. I'm Simona Di Martino. So I'm actually a postdoctoral fellow here at the University of Toronto, and I myself am involved in comics. So I do research on comics for teenage girls, and particularly I study the figure of the teenage. So without further ado, I would introduce our speakers today. So I would start with Maria Donati. So she's originally from Lucca, Tuscany. After earning her law degree, she pursued storytelling by attending the Scuola Holden in Turin, a creative writing school founded by Italian author Alessandro Baricco. In 2021, Maria relocated to Toronto, where she began working for a literary agency. Since the spring of 2024, she has been part of RAID, Royal Academy of Illustration and Design Studio, and RAID Press, contributing to their publishing and creative initiatives. Then we have Marco Piana. He's an award-winning writer, educator, and game designer specializing in education, comics, and tabletop RPGs. After a decade in academia, he pivoted to professional writing, design, and game design, founding Morning Tide Studios, a grassroots publishing house dedicated to indie graphic novels and TTRPGs. His creative works have attracted over 5,000 backers on Kickstarter, with his latest major project, Saja's Tome of Hearts, is that correct? Okay. Garnering support from nearly 1,800 bakers. Beyond his passion for comics and RPGs, Marco is a dedicated human rights advocate, working with EGO Canada, the country's leading organization for LGBTQ advocacy. And finally, we have Gabe Sapienza, loves making stuff. Sometimes it's music or writing. Gabe has worked in the entertainment and advertising industries for nearly a decade and a half, creating storyboards, concept art, posters, covers, animation, murals, and comics. In verse, Gabe focuses on his own creations, infusing his work with his love for video, film, and music. Okay, so welcome to our speakers. Okay, so we have mentioned RAID. You tell us more about RAID. How do you collaborate within the network?
Okay, thank you for having me here, first of all. So I'm a junior editor for RAID Press, which is part of a bigger organism called RAID Studio. We are in Parkdale, and we are a studio where a co-working space and an art gallery. And that seems so like separate things, but in reality, community, we all work together, so everything is connected. And Gabe and Marco, we have collaborated together, like for the anthologies. The books that you've seen on the tables are part of our. We mainly publish anthologies. We have a Forest Folk here. It's our kids' book and also an heritage collection about Canadian Canadian comics from two. We are working on a bigger project, which is republishing the original covers from the Canadian comics of World War II when there was an embargo with the U.S. We couldn't. I mean, in Canada, the comics were basically not allowed. Whose comics were not allowed anymore, and publishers started to create their own superheroes.
Cool.
One of the things that I appreciate the most about Raid is the fact that it was created by artists and writers, and it serves the purpose of connecting and helping writers and artists create new art. And that's what brought me to starting a collaboration with Raid, and like I'm very happy to be there. And on Fridays, enjoy the beauty of just working together with other artists in the same space, but also collaborate with other artists, because if we share the same space, very often it happens that friendships start blossoming and collaboration starts creating it in a very wholesome way. It's also a great place to learn. It's a great place to make alliances and friendship, and a great place to establish yourself as a writer or an artist for comics.
I guess it's hard to add anything more to that, but I joined the studio, I think, back in 2016 or 2017, just looking for community and just looking for more people to collaborate with, and really just sharpen my skills as an illustrator. And I feel like the community did just that and connected me with people that I'm still friends with today. I'm currently independent, but we still collaborate together. And yeah, that's how I met both of you. And I think like some pretty big career opportunities came up as well through the studio, and there's a certain sense of professionalism, but also like in general, it's hard to navigate the world as an artist, and having a lot of artists around that have been doing it for a lot longer than you and who are a lot better than you often opportunity to kind of learn a new skill set for navigating the world as a writer, as an illustrator.
I also like the presence of Ramon Perez, our CEO. He's a landmark community in Toronto and all over Canada. So he creates connection for everybody and helps everybody nurturing their passion.
Perfect. I think it's a great network. You should visit this place in Toronto.
Absolutely.
Okay, my first question would be, when did your passion for comics start? Easy, but I don't know, maybe it's not.
I'll try to answer as best I can. It's hard to say, but I think probably like toddler to age 5. Like I think I was exposed to a lot of like Marvel and DC comics at the time, as I'm sure most people are. I think I became very obsessed with for a certain period of time. I had an unhealthy obsession with Spawn. It was weird for a little while. Not still obsessed, but yeah, it's definitely one of the fueling elements for me, for sure.
I remember drawing very badly a character that is so exquisitely 1990s, and probably no one remembers it. I remember drawing a Earthworm Jim.
Yes.
Yeah, that was my first like love. Like, and it was like in between video games and comics, right? It was this like video game character that was comic book artist that created also very interesting things afterwards. I remember falling in love with this wacky, quirky character, warm inside a super cyber suit. It's so awesome. So I started creating my own comics of Earthworm Jim, but I was probably just so they were not so good. And also, I was terrible at drawing. I'm still terrible at drawing. So that brought me to the passion of collecting comics and then writing for comics. Art? No, unfortunately, no, I can't.
For me, depends because from the place I'm from, Lucca is a very small town in Italy, but with a very big comic con. And when I was a teenager, I was looking for a job, and I ended up getting a job during the art fair. And that's my relationship started there, and it lasted like 10 years. So that's how I learned about comics. Looking for a job.
Okay, so thank you very much. Do you want to give us a little bit of an idea of where you're from in Italy and how you arrived in Canada, in Toronto specifically? Have a general idea. Yeah.
Sure. I'm originally from Genoa, Liguria, and I migrated to Canada to pursue my PhD in 2012, and then I left for a few years to go to the US, and then I was like, love Canada. And I'm going to go back. And I'm happily here in Toronto doing the things I love.
I'm in Toronto, but I'm the first in my family to be born here. My whole family's from Catan, basically, Sicily.
Your city. You have supporters.
Yeah, I love it there, and I also love it here.
And Maria, we know already.
Yeah.
Yeah. From Lucca. Okay. So can you tell us a bit more about your work and your role within comic books production? Illustrator, an author, and an editor.
So as an editor, I work mostly for now on substantive editing. I help writers and artists develop their story, and sometimes we have an editor at Raid, but sometimes I take care also of that part of the job. But in the last months, I've been like more focused developing the foreign rights part of the company. So it's been a lot of research and like translation, checking which products coming from Europe, especially Spain and Italy, because I speak those languages mostly, are suitable for a North American market. So that's what I do.
I usually take care of every part of comic creation because very often I deal with grassroots comic creation, right? We create the comic, we launch it on Kickstarter, we get the funds, and then we publish, right? So there are many different aspects of comics that need to be taken into consideration, especially if you want to create your own comics without passing through an editor. And of course, the first thing is to create the right team that can help you through, especially if you're not exactly a centerpiece. You have to also take a step back and say, you're not the centerpiece of the entire thing. You can create it, but it's a collaborative process. So you have to find the right artist, you have to find the right letterer, colorist, and create a very tight team that can create what the collaborative vision is. And of course, if you're the person that is supposed to work on the crowdfunding, you also have to make sure that you can provide the pay that they deserve and make sure that the project gets enough money to get full funding, then printing it in a way that backers are happy with the product and something can sell afterwards. There's many aspects of indie comics that go beyond what usually we'll do if you were to do like work on a different intellectual property for, say, Marvel. It's very exciting, but also there are many hats.
It's very complex. Like it's
Yes.
very long, I believe, and very complex.
Absolutely.
Yes. Very long.
That very long, yeah.
I'm sometimes the right artist. But I mostly draw pictures based on what the writer gives me and what the editor is looking for. A lot of the comic book work I tend to do is covers as well. I also have published my own comics, so I've done anything from the character design to the writing to the adding, which is basically laying out rudimentary colors, like color blocking for panels, and then fully coloring and even lettering it myself. But most of the time, I'm the hand that draws.
So I don't know about you guys, but I know nothing about real production. So how does this work? So the first thing you have, is it a script? And then you can call like an illustrator, or how is it built basically? That's what I'm curious to know.
I think it depends. Like in my case, if you're working on somebody's intellectual property, it's a different process. If you're working on your own intellectual property, I will say my personal experience is that you create the world building, or at least the structure. Then you go into character and setting, and then once you have a good idea of what the main characters will be and the setting, the the aesthetics, but also what animates the world, that you go into the script. Other people do the opposite. They have an idea in mind, they write the script, and then they create the world around it. It depends if you're like a builder or a pantser, as they say in the writing world.
Yeah, you have also like the situation where that's the perfect combo for me. At least it's the writer and the illustrator, the same person that sometimes just arrive with the story already like ready, and there is very little editing that you have to do, and that's for me that's the ideal situation.
But otherwise, what kind of editing do you do? I'm just curious.
So when you start like with a script, you usually have to check the script and start thinking very visually, like how the artist can translate the words into a drawing, into art, and like in the end, does it work for the reader to understand like the scope of the story? For me, it's easy. Like I'm still mostly in a learning process, but for me, it's easy to think about a comic as a movie. So there are panels that are like of the movie that you have to edit, and then you have like you move from the beginning to the middle, or like and you switch. That's what it is for me.
I think the process for me can be pretty organic. Like sometimes I'll start with like layout, for example, and basically those are, I guess, like a visual blueprint of the script. Just you're already kind of blocking out what the pages are going to look like. But sometimes I'll bounce between that, like character design, and then go into a script. Sometimes it's just an outline, and then I'll draw the whole thing, and then I'll write the script.
Okay.
Which is it can be harder to do it that way, but I think sometimes it's also about what gets it done and what feels genuine to the specific story you're making.
Any specific project you are particularly proud of?
A few, like actually many of them I've done with Raid. There's some work I have up here actually. Let's see if you want to go to we can start with the overview. This was from Raid 4. And this was the second story in the Raid anthology that I did first story I did everything on. Everything from script to lettering. So that was a really enriching experience. And I think like I end up paying many projects for different reasons, but this one I really enjoyed because it allowed me to explore a concept that was really interesting to me. And then you can go to the next one. So here's just a few examples. This is from an unreleased book.
An unreleased book is still in the works.
Yeah, with Raid. So I like to explore a lot of different genres. This, I think, is evident as a horror. Yeah.
Like the irregular sizes of the panels.
Yeah. So I guess this is an example of like how I arrange panels sometimes to kind of indicate what characters might be feeling or what in the plot.
Is this black and white, or is it supposed to be colored?
So this is actually, I should go back. This is an example of inking. So this is sorry, if you go back to the black and white one, this is an example of just like inks. basically hand it off to a colorist, and then after that, lettering comes along. I feel like I'm digressing. What's the next one after that?
No, that's fine.
I'm just gonna ramble now. Oh, proud of. Yes, proud of this one too.
Yeah.
I'm proud of this one as well. This one was actually a book for Z2 Comics, another anthology. They wanted a bunch of artists to create stories surrounding different pieces designed by Balmain designers. So we all got to come up with these stories for these characters wearing Balmain pieces. And I got to do whatever I wanted, which was pretty amazing. So I pitched them this very like Dark Souls-esque story that I got to do at the bottom again. Like I just gave them a very basic outline, a script, and then I did everything from the colors to the lettering. So I'm very well. And then later on, like there will be images of more of the process, character design, and concept art that went into it.
Yeah, if you want to go on it, that would be great also. So if
Sure.
you want to explain how to character.
Oh, absolutely. If we go to,
Wow.
well, I can show you basically where it starts. If you go to that 01 brainstorming, basically this is as simple as it can be when you start. Like I just put a bunch of stuff on a page and then try to get one idea to bring on another, and then from there, if you want a couple times. These are just very rudimentary examples of what I like handwritten notes personally. Yeah, and then like in between, I'll have, if you want to go next again, just like little character explanations.
Content warning.
Content warnings. If you go next again, this is how I lay out my documents. If anyone cares to know, when I'm doing my own book, reference is very important. I usually start with that, but then poor Kyle. Kyle was my letterer on this one. So Kyle did my lettering. That was a very panic moment, and he saved me. This was a raid 3, which is somewhere over there. Story in that was like big rush to the deadline, and I needed Kyle. So poor Kyle is part of my document. Then this was some Balmain character design for the hero character, as well as the outfit that they sent me reference for. So this was all sent to their editor, and they basically overlook it and give me the yes or no. This was a dream project in that literally everything I would send them, they were like, cool, great. Very rare, but very, very cool. We can go next. These were some characters. I can go into the characters themselves.
Sure. Yes, please.
So this story, which I think I've included all the pages of, I created these fate characters, and we've seen like fates appear in a lot of different stories. But I was like, what if they're like 3 entities, but also one, and they're gross and weird and standing on each other and stuff. And then they also loved that concept, which was great. And then I really wanted them to have this like this weaving element. They were like weaving a tale or weaving a fate out of like these threads. And I think I got the idea probably from Disney's Hercules.
Of course.
Yeah, I probably really liked the
inspiration, I guess.
yeah, in
Disney.
so many ways, yes.
Yeah.
And we can go next. This was the big bad in the story. I called him the Slanted King, and there was this badass blacksmith character as well. Like the design process is super fun for me too. When it comes to, you get to build out the world from top to bottom, down to the small details that the characters are wearing, and you get to think about, okay, why are these characters wearing these things? Why do they look the way they do? What individual element of their backstory, contributes to who they are in the pages you see. We can go next.
He's so fashionable, by
I
the way.
know.
He's really fashionable.
Yeah, I agree.
But I was wondering, so you as an author, for instance, do you need to describe to the artist how to wear a character, how to dress a character?
Absolutely. It depends on the level of collaboration, and it depends on world building. If you are a writer and you need to create something completely new, what I do is that I do a very detailed brief of everything. It could be like 2 or 3 pages depending on how complex it is. All the information you want. If you have like some particular color that you want, or like you provide as much information to the artist as you can, even just like not just visuals, literally even about like character psychology, backstory, and then most importantly, references. So if you find some visuals that represent what you have in mind, I make sure to add everything I can. It doesn't have to be like 20 pages long, but as I find that the more one says and transmits to the artist, also in terms of excitement, the easier it is to have a very strong first draft. So I try to get as much information in the best possible way given to the artist at like the first meeting.
To expand on that, actually, if there's any writers in the room, if you're working with an artist, I really like a design deck. So if you have, like Marco was saying, like on top of just writing out descriptions, whatever you're pulling inspiration from, just creating a deck out of that. Already start like the ideation process for the artist, which is really helpful.
Pinterest is great for that.
Pinterest is fantastic for that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Highly suggested.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to go on with that, then
Oh
maybe.
yeah. So these are just some other examples of this is another of my own stories. Just some examples of how the concept process can look. I really like to spend time with my characters. So like I'll often just draw moments that might not even be in the current story I'm writing, and I'll try to just kind of think of like, okay, what are their relationships like with other characters? What are their moments alone like? What do they think about? What do they worry about? So yeah, so those are just some examples of some moments from my story that maybe we'll someday find life outside of Raid 3, but is currently in Raid 3 as a short, Death and Julie. Yeah, and then we can go to the next one. What's this? Oh, this was for another raid book. Some character portraits that I was drawing to kind of explore this sci-fi world that was in a story that Kyle and I wrote. Kyle is the Kyle of For Kyle. And, we can go next. Yeah, just some more. I did some like full body exploration. Like sometimes in the process, I'd say that this differs from say character design for like video games that I've done because I just don't have as much time. So they don't really get much more than this most of the time. It's very common in video games to have like a full character turnaround or even an animation, but most of the kind of drawing a brain map approximation of what I've been like in a very rudimentary way here. We can go next. So these were more concepts from Raid 4, which by the way is called Anna's Armor. So I pulled the name from a Sicilian place and used it in the book. Okay, these are layouts or storyboarding on who you ask. But basically, I don't know if you can zoom into this. These are very loose sketches of the entire story. So I basically draw an entire comic in this format beforehand, and I even myself the printer. Oh my gosh, I'm losing the word. The template, so that I'm staying within safe bounds. And you'll see on the side, anytime I have a moment to kind of explore a character a little bit more, or like maybe an angle I haven't. I think there I was thinking, what is he actually wearing, and what does it look like from behind? So I'm deciding that while I'm storyboarding or laying the pages out. So, and this I think this is actually pretty similar to what you see in the final. I think the page layout stayed almost exactly the same. And Ramon Perez, who's head of the studio, he very frequently in these projects would go over my layouts and just make my pages look a million times better, because he's been doing this for I guess decades now. But yeah, more layouts. I think these are just more examples of yeah. This is the ball main story. This one is again Anna's armor. Yeah, and this one was this that appears in Raid 2.
I really like the way you blended concept art with storyboard. I find it fantastic. It tells a story in itself.
I've noticed like storyboard artists when working on film productions. I don't know if anyone knows Dan Milligan, but like big like Toronto or I should say Canadian name in storyboards for film, has worked on anything from the Apes to like or I should say the more recent Apes movies and more recent Terminator movies. He basically will do that even while storyboarding. He'll just have like these exploration things function, just like basically concept art, just drawn right beside like the stories that he's doing. Because even for, it's great for me because I need to explore it if I'm making the story top to bottom. So really helpful for anyone who's collaborating with you, because like you were both saying earlier, it is a collaborative process. So then sometimes that can inform the writing, and somebody might have an even better idea because you kind of figured out how, I don't know, it works in this world, or how, I don't know, how a specific kind of magic works. Yeah. Oh, this is an important step that I don't know how many other people do this, but I love doing a color script. That's basically taking every, well, in this it's already inked pages, but I'll take all of those pages that I've inked and do basically a very, very rough lay color blocking, because I really like the emotional story color can tell when you look at a graphic novel, and you can basically, like in this case, I wanted things to feel a little more surreal and thing by the end, so I went with these really like earthy and like this like more saturated like warm tones, and then into the pink and purple at the end when it gets more. There's like a really emotional quality to this story. This looks like a really close up of. I think we need to zoom out a little bit. There it is.
Okay.
Okay, so this is. Thank you. I think this is just to outline how it looks like when you go from inks to color. In this case, I handed these pages off to Kyle, I believe, and he flatted them for me, and then I colored based on his flats. So if you go next, these are basically what flats look like. They're just flat color that goes like underneath. If you're using like digital software, it's just either a layer beneath, or you can have it a layer above, depending on how you want your blending settings to go. And then what this does is it gives me these color groups for all of these panels already laid out for me. So when I'm going into like Photoshop, Clip Studio, Procreate, whatever you like, the next page, yep, perfect. You can very easily go into these isolated areas that have already been laid out for you, and just paint it so the color doesn't go out of the bounds, so that it basically, yeah, just makes the coloring process a lot easier.
So you do that with a computer. It's not something that you do.
Yes.
Not handmade.
Yeah, my work is probably like 99% digital. Yeah, this is all a digital process. I should have mentioned that. Yeah. Yes.
Can I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because you brought out using Illustrator or whatever for coloring.
Mm-hmm.
What the art? Do you draw on a tablet or something, or old-fashioned ink on paper? Or both?
At this, I have to say I very rarely finish my art traditionally. But like I was showing before, like in a more like exploratory fashion, like I'll go and I'll sketch like I shouldn't say by hand, it's still by hand, I guess, but like in a traditional sense, in a sketchbook. And then sometimes I'll take like a drawing that I've done like in traditionally, and either phones are good enough now that I just take a picture of it and I'll just you know, on Dropbox or whatever, AirDrop, whatever. I'll take it in.
Seen so far would have been done directly on.
But yeah, so I use mostly gum products right now, and basically, yeah, I went on to start using like, you're basically just drawing on the screen. It's like like you would on an iPad or anything like that. Yeah. What's next? Oh, okay. So now we have some before and after of these are the Balmain pages. So again, in the creation process, in this specific case, because I was handing everything off to an editor at Z2, I would send them these for like basic approval. And if you want to go next, then I would send them these, which would be, these were the inks. And then after these are approved, I would color them up. Yeah, and that's basically the process you'll see for the next few pages. So this is my page 1. This is my page 2.
I love what you did here.
Yeah, that was a fun one. That's an example of designing on the page. Like, that did not have a design. But for that, I basically came up with it then and there.
And the hands of the fate.
Right.
So beautiful.
That's a good point. I forgot.
Yeah.
I had the idea of like them framing it out the stories with the, you know, with the twine or whatever they were using. Yeah.
Was it a transition piece? Then like you go from the hands, then the hand story, and then
I would have loved to go that much more in depth. It would just end up being like, you see it at the bottom of the page, and then suddenly the hands are the pages. I was like,
okay, let's do
it. This is due really soon.
Deadlines.
Yeah, that would have been really cool. This is an example of like, sometimes even in the line, the initial line process, sometimes in comics, because everything's digital now, I notice people still use the term pencils for that initial line blocking. I say lines, but we'll say pencils or line phase. You'll notice I changed the composition because I just, it didn't feel powerful enough, so I just centered everything, including like this like really buff like blacksmith like yeah, because the first one was like this very Zelda moment,
Yeah.
and then I was like, yeah, but I wanted it to feel more like it had more presence.
Would the editor comment also like on this process?
Mostly when you go look at what, like you were talking about approval before, you have to think like, is it clear for a reader? Is that engaging? You have also to ask yourself, or like, is there depth? And then when you go to the colors, you evaluate it if like everything just like matches with like what the story wants to communicate. And then basically, no, we have at Raid, we have Ramon that has like the last saying on everything, because as an editor, sometimes you're more focused on the word or drawing, and then you need someone that is very visual, that sometimes comes with like, let's change this panel, let's break this panel in two, and like to give a different flow to the story.
Okay. So it's always a collaboration.
Yeah,
always. Cooperation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually I do really enjoy input. Honestly, like I know I was complaining about it before, but it is really helpful if it's in service of the story and how it reads to the reader. I think it is really important. Yeah.
I find it much better than writing a novel. Novels are beautiful. It's a one-person job, and for the longest time, you work on your writing. Very often you don't want to share with folks, very often, if you share it, folks are not ready to read it, or it's too long, so they don't want to read it. They read it just because they love you, and they're wonderful. But it's such a long and daunting process that takes years, and then it's ready. You have to rework on it, and hope that someone will read it and like it. When it comes to writing for comics, the feedback is so fast, it's so enjoyable. You write a script of 24 pages. The artist creates their own version of your story, and it's so nice. It's so quick. There's like such a beautiful dialogue, and then it comes to life in possibly just a few months. It's a completely different world. You never feel alone in the process, right?
I also find out that when you write a novel, the relationship between writer and editor, there is so much more conflict, honestly. Because for the editor, sometimes some editors tend to think you write, I rewrite. That is never healthy. And in comics, it's a team basically, so it's like a team, and the editor cannot do something like that because there is the artist and the writer, too many voices, and you don't want to make anybody unhappy. But with novels, they do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
They do that.
And I think that writers sometimes can be a bit jealous of their stories, and they have like a very specific idea in mind. And if you're writing novels or short stories, then it's the entire world. You have to discuss with your editor, but it's your world. But if for comics, I think it's very healthy to understand that it's a shared vision. So yes, it is important to see a world that you're imagining coming to life, but it's a world that you're basically giving an idea to another person to develop that world, and you share it. And the editor has some great ideas, and then you have another person that can have like a visual perspective, and they change it. And then there's the colorist bringing into it, and there's the letterer who does such an incredible job to bring the words to life, right? It sounds so underestimated because when we write in a typewriter or in a computer or for novels, like the style doesn't really change, right? It doesn't really matter. But in comics, the way in which you write is so important for storytelling. Like the font and like the way in which a word is bold just occupies an entire panel. It tells so much, right? So all these minds are working together to bring a collective vision to life. And writers, I think, should embrace it. And it's not always easy, especially if you start writing mostly for novels or short stories at first.
Wow, it sounds amazing. I want to
It's
be
awesome.
part of the team, but I can't draw up. It's difficult. So another question I have is aspect of your job. Do you like the most? What part is the most enjoyable?
I like the research of artists. I'm like making connections, especially because the moment I'm working on a magazine for the press, and me having actions and discovering new artists has been a very important part of my job. I really like it.
It's hard to narrow down. I appreciate like the idea of like where your job can take you and the people you can meet. I mean, this is an example. Cool. Yeah, I think like it really opened up my world. I'd say art in general, like in terms of traveling, like seeing and meeting new people, like-minded people, opening up a lot of different discussions. I think the collaborative process that comes out of most of the work that I do, I think, I should say some of the work that I do, to like being able to build worlds together is really good. Like so many friendships have evolved out of that as well. So I think like that connective tissue in the end is what feels the most gratifying. Even though I love improving my own craft, I think it's really nice to have that community aspect. Yeah.
For me as well. And
Yeah.
like the part that I like the most is when you have a new character, like a tiny piece of world building, and it comes to life through pencil work, or like oh my god, it's alive. It's almost like a Frankenstein moment. They're like, it's alive, and it's beautiful because like fantastic. Your story really comes to life, and the flow. It's so beautiful. But when you have a character in mind and you imagine this character for many weeks and you keep thinking about it, and then someone else creates the character, and very often they're even better than what you imagined. It's such an incredible moment that really it's like, oh my god, it's you. So I really like that.
Or even like when, as an editor, we have an idea for a story, and you are able to get in touch with an illustrator that you, and they answer back and say yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's satisfying.
It's nice from the other way around.
Yeah.
Reaching out to an editor you really like and they pay attention. Yeah.
You are definitely passionate about that. But how do you think the comics are perceived by the public or by other people? So when you say I work within the comic industry, what other people say? How do they usually?
I have a friend that one of the first, I mean, like at the beginning of our relationship, and I told her working comics, it was like, is that even a job? It's like, and it's like, because in his mind, I don't know, there was this like, I know Marvel movies, I don't know comics, I don't know what he was thinking. Sometimes, especially when I was in Italy, and you don't really fit a person people believe who work in comics, they're kind of like, oh, so it's like, why? What do you do?
Is it a hobby?
Yeah, or like, you don't look like someone that works in comics. And I don't know. I mean, it's the most like the reactions are always like, I cannot manage them, so I'm just like sometimes just say work in publishing.
Publishing more general.
It's more general.
Yeah. What about you, Marco?
The same goes for writers. If someone says, I'm a full-time writer, people are like, okay, but how do you make a living? What do you do beside being a writer? But like, writing is so important in so many parts of everything we do, right? Like you can write movies, you can write for comics, you can write for books, but also you can write for education, right? Somebody has to write like books that we buy at the bookstore at the university, right? Of course, a lot of professors do, but also there's like, for example, language education books. Somebody writes them, or like the courses that a lot of people working for the University of Toronto have to take in order to start working at the University of Toronto. Those are written too. So there is like content writers that are writing everywhere. I think is their main job.
Yeah, I think I noticed that those themes as well. Like there's a certain sense of I think the first reaction I get is like, oh, which is nice, but I think I do think that like a lot of people, there's this like a lot of people just consume all these things, like you said, children's books or certain language books, like all kinds of media, like in an unconscious way, without considering like
the work behind.
Yeah, and so when I notice like when I try to describe, well, comics can really be anything, be whatever you want. There's sort of like a but why kind of mentality to it, and then I'm like, well, like I got to explore like trauma with my work, or I got to explore like emotional journey and stuff. Like no, people don't really like, huh, okay, like it's just very very like surface level most of the time. But that's why a lot of artists, yeah, a lot of folks in our field like kind of get the process of making it. Yeah.
Sometimes people assume just, oh, you work in comics, you have to draw me something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's like there are different rules. I cannot draw.
So true. But another question I have is, would you recommend this career? So a career in comics.
I personally, because of my experiences and my background, and I've been all over the place most of my life, I'm a 20 career or job, and I feel like specifically like in the world as it is now, it's better to be like that I ended up in comics because I was looking for a job, and I really liked it. But I'm hoping. I mean, I've been working also for a literary agency.
Mhm.
I've been working in Italy. I worked for a while for a social media agency who was working, and they were working for publishers mostly. So it was like, I'm open to anything. I like publishing, but I don't know where I will end up. So I'm not giving up.
I think a very viable career. I think that it's all very good as a like anything that really makes you happy and like makes your time worth it is always a good idea. Writing, surprisingly, can be a lucrative career, and this is something a lot of people are biased against. A lot of folks believe that creative work is per se not lucrative. It doesn't have to be lucrative. People can do it and in their free time and have a great time. It doesn't even have to be a person's main job to be meaningful. As long as it's meaningful for you, it's the most important. But secondly, creative work, we consume, as you were saying, creative all the time, right? And it's in many, many other places that we often don't see. We think about Marvel and DC, but there's so many other publishers, and there's movies, and then there's like advertisement. And so visual arts and writing is everywhere, literally. So if you know where to look, into a very nice career.
Yeah, yeah, those are some really good points. I'm trying to think of how I can expand, but yeah, like it can be very lucrative. I think personally for myself, it's been more of a like a tool, like either of expression or like I'll sometimes jump on a comic project, but I think that's why I identify mostly with like illustrator as a title because I do more of a general uh, kind of work. Um, but yeah, I think in terms of it being lucrative and to just live off of your comic book, you can absolutely do it. Um, I think like for me, it worked out in the way that it has, where I do it like from time to time.
Great. Now I think I have the last question because I don't have too much time. Do you have a favorite comic, either Italian or from the rest of the world?
I would say my comfort because that it's your area of expertise, which
Oh,
Nice.
Oh.
favorite forever.
That was such.
You paid her to say
I didn't, I swear.
Simona just gave a letter.
No, we already connected on that because she
Yeah,
said,
true.
I'm doing a research on Witch, and I was like, oh wow, Will, I love her.
Agree, I agree.
And Bill had one of my favorite Italian comics comes from the same golden age of Disney Italy, and it was Picappa. So it was Paperinic.
Oh,
Amazing.
Paperini.
So good.
Oh,
It was an incredible moment in which Disney Italy said, you know, we want to do something that is kind of similar to Marvel, but we want to use our amazing artists to do that. And with that, we had Witch, Paperini, Pickup, and Mickey Mouse Investigation. It was great. Like the first 30 issues were incredible. They will blend the Disney world with the dynamic of Marvel. It was and 100% made in Italy.
I think yeah, I'll say in the Italian comics too. I think like the most influential books, like when I was in college and learning how to draw, was the Sergio Tacchi books, like that I had a Shadows there, I think is the one. That one was just incredible. Like the art was the way he handled figures. I think like I really liked Sky Doll. It was the by
Sky Doll.
Alessandro Barbucci
Yeah.
and Barbara Canepa. Yeah.
The same
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
illustrators.
Oh,
Yeah.
see, I should have known
Small
that.
world.
Yeah, no,
But yeah.
where is?
Super cool.
Oh wow.
And I think you said one.
No, it's
Okay.
fine. It's fine. We can keep on like naming Berto and
Yeah. What about
everything else.
Gigi Cavagnano? He's doing Dylan Dog right now.
Oh,
Yeah, his covers are
it's a
incredible.
big
I only came across Dylan Dog in my 20s, so yeah, I guess that ages me quite a bit. I should have said that. Anyway, yep.
Okay, so thank you so much. I will now leave the floor to questions, if there are any from the public. Please feel to raise your hand. Yes, don't be shy.
Ooh.
Having a personal project is always good, but I mean, it's also good like to get experience in different fields and like to understand which one is like the best for you. But personal projects, I think someone should always have a personal project.
I think it's maybe not a great answer, but I think both could be a thing, because as you, yeah, your personal taste will probably, your craft and your personal taste will improve working in an environment where you're in a pipeline. But the yeah, is this specifically for like getting into making something regularly, or like monetizing, or like is there a specific angle? Like, hmm, I'm not sure. What about, you might know with the Kickstarter would be I'm trying to think like goal specific answer.
It's hard, you know.
Yeah,
Like I mean, I think there are many ways to tackle it, right? I do believe that until not too long ago, starting early, entering the industry from like an early age, and just like starting with small things and then growing and then improving your network, work by work, will allow you to get position in the industry, start making yourself known, and then growing, and maybe keeping your side project there for whenever you have the time, if you ever have the time. That's another
Yeah.
situation, right? Because like you get into it, it's like, I'll be a creative, and then you get into the industry and you find yourself creating for others,
Yes.
and then you don't have the literally the juice to actually make your own stuff, right? So that's a danger.
There are also like facilitate you, like if you want to have your project like Webtoon or Tapas Comics, where you just upload whatever you have. You don't even have to be consistent with that, and you just create like your project or your small projects on that platforms while having a day job or like working in a pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm working with now Hannabel Olansky. She has a quite popular webtoon she has been developing for years, but she's a colorist, right? And she works like on different projects. Years.
Yeah, that's a great point. So you both reminded me of I think ultimately having your own project, whether it's like parallel to working in a studio or working in a pipeline, is really important, because if you eventually lead with that, I always used to hear like work begets work, and so like and people like to hire you for how you think. So, but also if people want to publish you, or eventually want to turn your idea, like if it gets option for TV or film or something like that, then you're leading with like the work that best represents you. That's why I think like always opting for your own, at least alongside whatever else you're doing, but definitely making the time for it, I think is super important. Yeah.
I agree. And also, like, even if you don't work directly for the industry, a strong idea and you can bring it to life, people respect them. So they might be like, who is this person? Who is this rookie? We don't know them. But then they take a look at what you've done and they're like, wow, actually pretty good. Why don't we give this person a chance? Right? And maybe you work on like your social media presence, or you have a webtoon, or like you're on Kickstarter, and like you can show that you have proof that you know what you're doing and you know how to create the stuff that you want. I do believe that people consider that.
Yeah, I can absolutely confirm that you'll be hired more for like if that thing that most represents you, if that's at forefront, people see that and they're gonna want you for that. So yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
You guys mentioned how there's a specific person that I'm just wondering if you guys talked about how that's a something that's very magical. Does that person going into that kind of process do they write? Because I'm looking at the back even and it kind of looks like handwritten, but sometimes it looks like do they handwrite all of these letters or do they kind of like type some of them and it's like a specific method they use and then like the more things that ways to work.
You can make font out of handwriting sometimes. Yeah. Even like I think you can even start from the handwriting of the artist and make a font that resembles that. It's very complicated. I mean, like for me, letters are very important.
Yeah.
In the job. And sometimes when you're at the lettering process, from my experience, you can also discover that the story doesn't work already, and that's a domino effect, and you have to change everything.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Especially at that
At that
phase,
point,
like it's the end part of the comic.
Yeah. The say also like for the books that at least for our stories that ended up in Raid, we used like some fonts that were publicly available. Like so sometimes the letter will have like their own I guess what would you call it, library of fonts they like to use. But yeah, some like you were saying, like some books you might want to create an entire font for depending on what the vibe is.
Yeah.
Very quick question. I'm super ignorant about all this stuff. I'm just curious about the creative process. Perhaps you talk about that. But is the writer writing the text of the text of the next story that is going to be told, or also the illustrations? How does it work? That process? Because one thing is more a novel. One thing is the type of the dialogue. And the dialogue can be shaped by the student. I was wondering which the
Absolutely, great question. It changed completely. It's like it's a completely different structure, and it's exciting in its own way because like it's more like an instruction manual for the artist to create what you kind of have in mind, right? Whereas like when you write novels, you have to weave in the descriptions and like make sure that everything works with the flow and the rhythm. The descriptions are applied, right? It's like very structured, divided by panel. You start with a panel, you give enough information about what is going on, and like the feelings. You can make it as complex or as simple as you want, depending on your relationship with the artist as well. And then you go into the dialogues. Initially, it's difficult to understand how much dialogue a panel can fit in, depending on the size. But then you get the knack of it. It gets easier. It never gets super easy. And then you have the sound effects, right? So it's much more schematic, and you have to think in frames rather than in theater or like in movies or anything related to the moving image or moving picture. You have to think about still frames. So your mind has to be very visual and make sure that what you want to be immortalized in a picture, basically. And then you move to the next one and the next one. And yes, it's all there. And you have like, this is basically most importantly for the artist. So you're writing for the artist to bring your vision to life. My pleasure.
It was another question. Yeah, over there.
That's a question for a editor, and I'm not. Well, at Raid, like our model is based on Kickstarter, so it's like the funding comes from the relationship that you establish with the on the platform, and then you manage the budget in a way that you have money for the salary of the editors, or like for freelancers, sometimes line editors or like copy editors are freelancers. And the artist, it depends really on the expertise and their rate. Maybe
I think it varies quite a bit, so it's hard to say. I mean, I've seen really small budgets and really big budgets. It really depends on your team, and I think relationships as well. Like if it's I find the smaller project where everyone's kind of in on the same idea and they all have the same goal in mind, and maybe the idea is like you launch it together, and then whatever you make on top of printing costs, etc., you've all decided that that's the deal. That can be as low as $0, or I've seen budgets between, like, if we're talking 24-page book, probably like I want to say like I've seen like 10K range just for an artist. I've seen 10 to 20, maybe even more. Depends on who you hire as well. I'm not sure what writer rates are like, but yeah, the 24-pager. The idea is that the artist is delivering pages daily, weekly, and so yeah, you're basically thinking like a 20, ideally a 24-week block, but probably something more like 30 to 40, and hopefully, yeah, actually that's more like a year. So 10K sounds a little low.
yeah.
I'm trying to revise, but yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. But like make connections, because the creative industry is a lot. It's community based. So even if you don't have a big budget for a project, you can just exchange favors. Sometimes it's like, I need a lecture, I'm gonna do this for you, and next time you're gonna do something for them. I've seen a lot of doing that.
Absolutely. Applying for funds really helps, and also it gives a stronger foundation for indie projects. If your project has been funded by the Canadian for the Arts, editors will look at it with a different light, right? And also gives you some seed funding. So if, for example, you're a writer like me and like you want to create your own thing, unrestrained, then crowdfunding is the way to do it, right? I think that having a very direct and clear language and understanding with everyone involved is very important. And writers, and I found also artists, they understand each other. Like they know that if you're working for a giant corporation that has of dollars, they expect a certain amount of money. But if you're working for an indie project that you don't know exactly how much you're gonna make, and you might make something along the way, they're more understanding, especially if they like it, right? But as long as there's a communication and things are clear and they're fair, one can create things with uh, with an okay budget. I wouldn't say with, because like if you're a writer, you're bringing in the story, but there's so much work that the artists have to create. So I will personally never ask an artist to do it for free, never. But I will be very clear about what we can do, and then you can negotiate. You can say, look, this is the budget. Maybe we can do it without colors. right? Maybe we can do it with a simpler style. Maybe we can do it in a way that it doesn't a ton of hours, right? But then if you have the budget, instead we can call in and say, look, I want to create something. This is like the dream of my life, and I have this budget per page. Let's make it work.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
How much has AI become the threat to the comic industry? Do you think aspiring writers and artists should worry?
I think writers should be worried, to be very honest with you. And I think the solidarity among anyone working in the creative industry is fundamental to make sure that we still have a chance. The quality of AI is decent, but it's not good. But some companies, they strive for excellence, and that's fantastic. Whereas companies will be like, well, it's cheap, it's good enough, we don't care, right? So this is why, for example, in whatever I create, that there's no AI in the process. And I think that it's important, if one's in a creative industry, as an indie creator, as well as like a person that is more established, to make sure to say, we do not accept work that is AI generated, or we're not interested in incorporating AI generated content in our work.
There was another question. Oh, and I want to add.
It's basically the same idea for artists, like solidarity, and I think, yeah, trying to challenge companies that are gravitating that way, because sometimes it's more of a structural issue where they'll adopt a model where more about quantity, and AI can absolutely do quantity better than anybody. So, yeah.
There was another question. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about distribution. So we talked about Kickstarter, so that obviously gives you sort of foundation there. But how what venues for distribution now that is there something beyond the comic store? I mean, how do you get your work basically to audiences?
With a sales rep most of the time, and like with companies like Lunar or like that take care of distributions.
What are the points of comic store?
Yeah, like it basically it's like through distribution you get like a portfolio of comic book stores, and they receive catalogs from distribution and choose if like to carry your product or not.
Any other question?
Sorry, I wanted to further elaborate.
Sorry.
No,
sure.
no worries at all. When it comes to Kickstarter, especially for projects, very often the Kickstarter is the end goal. Like you get, like I will say, 70% of the earnings of that specific product will come from the Kickstarter. And then 30% will come through other means. For example, your online marketplace, or if you go to Comic Cons or like smaller conventions. But like our model is based on Kickstarter first. So our main like clients are our followers on Kickstarter. We regulate, like we literally ask them what they want. We make sure that they're happy with the result, and we do it again, making sure that they come back and improve through like quality or like through advertisement. And I know there are other smaller companies, they do the same. So Cobalt Press, they have a distributor, but I know that like they trust very much how much they're going to put the Kickstarter as well. Other indie companies for tabletop RPGs are the same. Even gaming companies, they trust very much how much they're going to make through their Kickstarter, because it's going to cover a lot of their expenses and part of their earnings as well. This is, of course, a different mode from like classic publishing, which is more about like having your like distributor and like going through that sick circle of publication. but it can be a very viable form as well. You create your niche, you communicate more directly, you create content that makes them happy and excited, and you do it.
How to develop like in terms of to pitch to game. Mm. I mean, for me, and stuff to gauge, I don't know if I have a good answer for you.
Are you transform something a comic in a movie?
Like, I think it's specifically like how to create something that might appeal to someone you want to, like, maybe if there's, yeah, like a more appealing, I guess, formula to something you could pitch for a
I know certain writers that write exactly with that in mind. They write novels, but they write novels that they know will have a high potential to be pitched or to be even optioned. It doesn't matter if it gets great. It's like treasure trove. But even if it gets optioned, usually, especially when it comes to novels, it's a huge boost. It's almost as big as like getting distributed and sold. So a lot of writers, especially nowadays, are going towards like writing a novel that is a novel in itself, but it's pitched easily so that you have a chance to be optioned. When it comes to comics, I am not sure, but it's true that a comic is already such a step forward towards.
There are agents sometimes.
Yeah.
Agents that like or companies that take care of that part of the business, and like they represent books with media companies, and like they pitch a comic, and someone interested can buy it and develop a TV show or a movie. There is one actually really big, it's called AM Book Comics. They represent a lot of like not just for rights, but also like for media companies.
I think there was another question. Yeah, Daniele, and then Vincent. Okay.
Thank you for this conversation. And on this, both of you, three of you, live and work between different cultures. In your specific area of the work that you do in the comic industry, do you create or work on a story with a specific market in mind, or you try to take a story that has more of a national appeal, or in terms of storytelling, try to target a specific country? I don't know if there's a difference in this. Because Maria, you mentioned that you work specifically on Italian and Spanish, and maybe
Yeah, I'm starting on that. Yeah, you always try to find stories that have a broader appeal. Of course, it's like when I go and like read an Italian comic book, I don't I don't go and look for one that is like in a specific Italian suburbs that nobody knows, and I can connect with that, but because I come from that background. For a North American audience, you have to think more broad. It's like more on bigger themes, or like even like if with a comic as a background that is more easily recognizable.
I find myself very often content for two main niches, which is like people who like tabletop RPGs with large world buildings, and folks who like graphic novels. They're colorful on the young adult side. So we have these two target audiences, and they were actually created through my personal passion for RPGs and graphic novels, especially style bande dessinée, which come from my upbringing in Italy, right? Like you're in Liguria, you're so close to France. Whenever we will go to France, I will always look for the most beautiful and colorful graphic novel to buy. And that shaped the way in which I want to create graphic novels. And but instead of looking for a specific niche, we kind of created the right niche that will fit the initial vision.
I think mine's more. It's like I kind of just make what I want to see and then hope other people like it. So there's not much of a formula to it. Yeah.
I think we have another question, right?
I would say on Kickstarter is the concept and the quality of the pitch. You need to have a very clear concept that is like memorable, unique, and powerful. You have to deliver it, and it needs to be clear and enticing for like from the first moment you land on the page. It needs to be clear what you're selling, and it needs to be very, very deliberately as beautiful as you can, because you have only one to convince someone that that is a good idea. And then they go down. If they're already scrolling down, it means that you've already done a great job.
Okay, do you want to add anything?
I think I don't know. I don't know if I have a good answer for you. It's tough. It's tough to say because like I find that I think what made me marketable as an artist has been versatility, but also doing one thing only can be a trap, but so can versatility. So it's I guess it depends on what you're more interested in doing. Because I notice a lot of artists who do get the most attention, I might be wrong, are the ones that are perceived to be, you know, that one person who does that one thing, and especially I feel like Instagram, for example, is a lot like that right now. I see a lot of artists, and that's kind of they'll just have a brand, and that's it. Like while I'm scrolling, and that's really cool. I know a lot of people because I know what to expect, and that can be really cool. But as an artist, sometimes that's stifling for me personally. But I do think I think either one gets you noticed. Versatility is cool because you're kind of showcasing how you think. So and that you can think in a number of different ways and juggle a lot of different things. So yeah, but I do both of them need to show some level of consistency. So I think consistency is probably the common denominator of both those things.
Do you have any other questions? Oh, yeah.
You spoke about writing, and I was just wondering what goes into that. One thing like writing your ideas down for yourself to see, but and knowing the world you want to create, but it's I feel like it's much more different than you're doing it for someone else to see and someone else to bring that vision to life.
It is very different. But it is in a way very similar to what one will want for a novel. Like in novel writing, everything is brought together and weaved together in the most interesting story that a person can create for that subject, or we try to. And in the other cases, just it's more about like providing as much information that you can to help the artist create what you have in mind. However, if you make it enticing, that's actually great. So you have to, that same kind of passion and attention for enticing the reader, but focus that on one single person or like two people or like your team, and bring them into your vision. More like concrete and short paragraph, right? You don't have like Oh, and she woke up that day with a headache because they were starting to think about this, and that, and then the sun was coming out, and it was like a burning fire in August. You don't have that. You have to just break it down. But in that paragraph, you can still put a lot of poetry, and the artist will appreciate it and bring it to the paper. Of course.
Is it possible to get too up in that like character Bible, or is it worth honing it until it's perfect and then doing the art?
This is really up to you.
That's the eternal struggle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I love world building, so sometimes I get lost in world building. I create this world, and sometimes I'm so comfortable just living in there. I don't find it necessary to do anything else, right? But there is a beauty in finding a way to translate that into a comic book, a graphic novel, a novel, and so on and so forth.
Going back to Raid as like a work environment, when I was starting out there, like a phrase I would hear a lot was "done is better than perfect." So that's a constant reminder for me, like even as of doing it. That is the struggle, is finding like how much is perfect for you, but also like if it needs to be a story, like how much does it also need to be done and out there. So that is always a struggle for me though, till this day.
Same for me.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? No? I think we're fine now. So please join me in thanking our speakers. Thank you so much.